Hey, She Slayers, and welcome to another episode of She Slays the Day podcast. I am your host, Dr. Lauryn Brunslick. So we are officially into Lent. For those of you who are good Catholics or bad Catholics, I don't know. Do Lutherans do things too for Lent? I'm not really. I don't know. All of a sudden, you probably don't know this about me unless you're like fully in stock mode. So I went to Catholic schools from fourth grade through high school, but it was because they were the only school that would let me skip a grade. Like we had moved from Arizona, so I skipped third grade. So I blame that on not like pretty much any trivia I will reference. Like you guys, I skipped third grade. Like that's when they taught that. So like I don't know anything about presidents, states, geography. I believe there's a lot of stuff that apparently they teach in third grade. I'm just gonna keep using that as an excuse, but not my point. So we don't really practice Lent because I'm not really a good Catholic. I'm actually not a Catholic at all. And but I decided to whip it out this year to the family. Just kind of like surprise. Mom feels like doing Lent, so y'all need to figure out something. I'm trying to turn it into a teachable moment. Like this is why we do it. And so our youngest, Ty, that kid. Okay, so I'm going through Amy Spolstra's focus training right now because I'm doing the level 1 certification in a couple weeks and I'm cramming and it's fine. It's fine. This is how I live in my whole life, feeling like a hot mess and I'm behind. And just as she's talking about all these things, I'm just like thinking about Ty, and she's like giving these examples of kids where they may be really sweet, but then they, need things to be their way. And I'm just like, yeah, that's Ty. All right. So, anyways, so the whole family comes up with like what they're going to be doing. And her, Charlie, Ty's older sister, says that she's going to give up sweets, but she's going to give herself like 5 cheat desserts. So, like 5 times over the 40 days, she will, because like Kirby's birthday's in there. And so, cake. And I honestly, I don't know. Some of you might be cringing of like, you're missing the whole point by allowing cheat things. But like, I think that it was going to be all or nothing. So, and I would have said 100%. She'd have been like, I'm out. I'm not doing this Lent thing. So she's like, yep, 5 times. I'm like, you know what? I love that. And we talked about whether it should be cheat days versus a cheat like dessert, single thing. And we decided on single thing. And so Ty's like, yeah. So I think that I'm gonna give up sweets during the day, Monday through Friday. We're just like looking at her as a family, like, so like school? Like, you just gonna not eat? You're not even supposed to be eating sweets at school. And she's like, well, unless somebody brings, like, it's their birthday. And like, I'm not gonna start it on Valentine's Day because I'll start it the next day. And so, sounds good, kid. Yep, you just keep on dancing to the beat of your own drum. Is that is that it? I think that's it. It's funny because Kirby's currently in the room while I'm editing, and I know that he's just holding back wanting to answer the questions that I'm like, but all right. So I don't think I have any updates for you. That's it. That's it. Today's guest. So this is Brian Paris. Now, don't get confused because it is a little confusing. So they both work for Genesis, although we are not talking about technology at all today, at all. I don't think we mention it even once. And Brian Capra was on in January, and he also, well, he like runs Genesis. So Brian Paris works for Genesis. Different Brians. Don't worry, this is not like a Freaky Friday or Rinse and Repeat Tuesday or Groundhog's Day or any of that stuff. So we are talking about it gets very like masculine, feminine energy. I think you're gonna love this. I now am actually going to steal from him. Like, I'm trying not to use masculine, feminine energy. And he talks about how he likes using alpha and omega, which I think just works better too, because like as a like alpha type female, like sometimes it gets weird when you're talking about masculine energy or feminine energy with a man, it can be really demasculinating. We talk about just upcoming generations. We just solve a lot of the world's issues today over here on She Slays the Day. So you're in for a good one. I will say, like I said, we don't talk about technology, but I love y'all so much. But this Jill app, you know what I'm talking about. Just trying not to get sued. Uh, is I know it works really great when you first start up, but like the number of chiros that we are coaching through the multi-passionate chiropreneur right now that are needing to switch because we're talking about streamlining their offices, getting rid of expenses. And we're like, oh, okay, well, you can pull that report here, da, da, da. And they're like, nope, tried that, it won't work. So I'm just saying, if you're new, if you're thinking about switching, I would say this is a good. I've been with him for 13 years, so I like him. So, all right, let's find Brian's. All right, Dr. Brian Paris practiced, owned, and operated a chiropractic practice that eventually evolved into an integrated practice with multiple offices. Dr. Paris now helps chiropractors leverage technology to improve their practice with Genesis software. Additionally, he coaches and consults on burnout, helping people recognize, recover, and rebuild. So funny thing about okay, so I do appreciate someone who can follow the rules when they come on the podcast because I say, please provide 4 to 5 sentence bio you'd like me to use. And some people just breeze right past that. Did you say 4 to 5 paragraphs? So nice and brief, but there must be something because as I'm reading it, because you also know I don't read things ahead of time. Again, flying by the seat of my pants over here, people where like all of the B's got replaced with V's, a V as in Valentine's Day. And so I was having to ad lib that in the moment. I think I nailed it. All right, let's pray like good Catholics and bad Catholics and non Catholics. And we'll get into this really, really cool conversation. I promise you're going to like it. Dear God, thank you so much for the spirit of discipline and this idea that Lent, gives it. I don't really know what like the main purpose we're supposed to get from Lent is, but I do know that there are some times where I just really get off the rails with self discipline. And I kind of start to float into, like, oh, this omega energy and self discipline gets labeled this almost bad thing of like it's this alpha masculine energy and it's toxic and we really just need more flow. And I don't disagree with that, but like that is a really slippery slope into comfort and slothfulness and, you know, just taking apart anything that's happening in society right now or any of those scripts or narratives we have around good, bad, alpha, omega, masculine, feminine, discipline, go with the flow. Like when we return to like the words of the Bible and what you want from us, like it's to lean into purposeful work. And the work is the point. It's not work so you can be this lazy, slothful, gluttonous person on the weekends. I mean, we've all watched Brad Pitt, Seven. Those are some of those deadly sins, right? What's in the box? Um, and so, like, just a reminder during these days of like, okay, thank you for this opportunity to return to self discipline, to show that as a sacrifice to you, and to continue being the best version, finding that balance, that constant balance of energies, so we can avoid burnout and just continue living on fire in a purposeful life. In your name we pray. Amen. All right. Without further ado, here is my conversation with Dr. Brian Paris. Enjoy. Okay, so a little bit of background on why I personally wanted to have you on the podcast. So the podcast, as I shared, I was on your podcast. So as I shared on yours or Genesis's, that this podcast wasn't always, I don't want to say male friendly, but it really started with an origin of like for the women by the women type of thing. And my experience being in a state of as a successful chiropractor willing to go have vulnerable conversations is that male chiropractors have been reaching out for the last 2.5, 3 years, being like, I relate and I resonate with this. And the podcast has really transformed. It's still predominantly female, But there's where my interest goes, so does the podcast. And I have really been fascinated with the conversations that people like Jordan Peterson are having around, I think it was very easy to kind of point a finger during a certain time at like men. Like we got phrases like toxic masculinity, and I started using like, I'm a recovering alpha male. And like my personality was like, I'm such a, I mean, I guess I'm a feminist, sure. But I mean, I think if you're like, oh, well, we support women, everybody's a feminist. But like my brain can go to like quickly to be like, no,
I
don't
support that.
mansplain me.
I'm not gonna give in that definition because I support women, but I
Yes.
don't know if I'm a feminist, right?
Yeah, I don't really know. Well, let's put that as a thing to add to the what are we gonna talk? What is that? But like my personality tends to be I'm a hype person. So like if society is telling me like, don't you mansplain me, you white 65-year-old male, like my finger gets all wagged. And so like I feel like I kind of went through that ride. And now I'm like, I see my husband who is so not that and like looking for an atmosphere within his friend group and like people showing up on in the media that he identifies with and is like, where is this space for guys to actually do the work? And so you and I kind of got into it on your podcast, and I was like, I would love to go there, if you
Let's
will.
go.
So,
Yeah, of
like, congrats.
course.
I feel like this could be a minefield for you. I'm
Not at
like
all.
so
No way.
impressed. Okay. Okay. So let's start with like you had kind of started talking about events that you host for men or like, I don't know,
Not
gatherings.
myself that I host,
Yeah.
but, stuff that I have attended. So I would put it as a large category of men's work,
Hmm.
where there are spaces, whether they're virtual or live, where men gather and work on both energies in the body. And what I mean by energies, so let's talk about polarity and resonance, right? So every being on this planet has quote unquote masculine or feminine energy. My teachers use the term alpha and omega energy, not to be confused with like an alpha male. That's a different context, right? I'm the leader of the big dog. No, I'm not talking about that. So alpha masculine, omega feminine, and we all have those. Now, the way that I look at it and explain it is basically the river bed is alpha, the water flowing through is omega. You can apply that to basically that alpha energy is direction, magnitude, get shit done energy. The omega energy is more flow, feel, express, movement, chaos. Some people have, regardless of sexual preference or gender, some people are tend to be more omega or more alpha. And in relationships, polarity is what creates attraction, right? You look at a battery, you got a positive and negative charges, and it creates an energy and an attraction. So polarity is what keeps marriages lasting, right? Hopefully. Resonance is where things are operating the same, right? I know your husband works with you, and
Hmm.
there's probably modes where you both are like in the get shit done mode. Like, okay, we got to figure out who's coming on the podcast, who our advertisers are, what's going on with the clinic, how do we get the kids to after school projects, and blah blah
Hmm.
blah blah blah, and then what's going on this weekend, right? And that's you're both in that get shit done mode. That doesn't equate to that spark that creates that
Right.
that desire, right? And
Hmm.
that's polarity. So when you can drop more into your omega and he can drop more into his alpha, if that's what you're more associated with, that's what creates that polarity.
Question,
Yeah.
do you think that it can work where a female,
Yeah.
identifying
Yeah.
female,
Got it.
can
Biological female,
okay,
right?
can they work in reverse? So, like, what we had talked about is, like, I have learned what's best for our relationship is that I allow space for him to tap into that alpha and for me to learn how to, like, check out temporarily from the alpha and be more omega. And that absolutely has, like, through marriage therapy and books and workshops, like, that's what needs to work for ours. Can it work the other way? Like,
Theoretically, I think yes. Just my experience in life and talking to a lot of females biologically, regardless of gender, or excuse me, of sexual preference. Like some people, like most females that I met, let's say heterosexual,
yep.
heteronormative females, wanna have that feminine evoked
Mhm.
from them
Mhm.
by the alpha. And what that means is the alpha handles the reservation. The alpha handles walking her across the street, being more still than she is, having a deeper breath than she
Pursuing
does.
her also.
Pursuing could
Yeah.
be. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, I've
And
told my
she,
husband before of like the pursuit even can happen in marriage, type of thing.
of
It's not
course.
just in the dating.
Yeah.
So you think it
Well, it can't
could?
end just in the dating.
Exactly.
Wait, did I answer the question?
I
Because we talked
interrupted
about
you.
men's work too. We talked about
Yeah.
men's work. We got to dive back into that.
Yeah.
This is more, like intimacy work.
Mhm.
And there are spaces, just go on Instagram and look this stuff up. Everyone is a coach in this. So you do have to be careful. Like everyone who has body parts is like, oh yeah, I'm a intimacy coach now. Right. And a
I think your
polarity coach,
algorithm
which
might
is,
be different than mine.
yeah, it probably is. But because I've been in these spaces. So with men's work, I've also been at live events and virtual experiences, and I'm part of a men's team for the last several years where we meet weekly and have a structured alpha structure where we're able to drop into our own omega and express certain things. How am I feeling? What am I doing? Those are, different ends of polarity. And then we create these structured spaces that allow us to share the same shit that every man is going through.
Mhm.
All the burdens are the same. And all the burdens for most women that I know are the same, like especially people like yourself running a business, running multiple businesses and raising children and being present as a mother. Like all of those things require, I think, sisterhood and brotherhood. And then also just camaraderie. Like from someone like myself, I have such a deep respect for women and humans in general, but for women who are like bearing children and then going back to the table and thumping on spines, like
Mhm.
you're incredible.
So do you feel like okay, so the answer is yes. So what societal expectations or stereotypes do you think men face when it comes to expressing their masculinity? Like, and then how does that impact their behavior?
Great question. I think obviously this is just opinion conversation, right?
Yeah. It's just you and I. Nobody even
Yeah,
listens to
yeah.
this
You know
podcast.
what? Yeah. Please comment if you're listening. I think it's important to bring up that concept of toxic masculinity, right? And what is toxic masculinity? For me, it's I'm stronger than you, I'm bigger than you, I'm faster than you. My ego is leading the way. I, leave a trail of tears behind me, and I've been
Crush
there
it.
myself. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, crush it. And instead, like now as I'm wiser and a little older, my brain thinks collaboration, not are you doing better than me or things like that. Because I've hit the bottom and I've built myself back up several times. I've burnt out completely, spiritually, creatively, physically, emotionally, and then healed and brought
Mhm.
myself back through that. But being toxically masculine is that space where, I also think like true masculinity is
Same word.
and stillness and breath and holding space. And what is that? It comes down to trust. Like, does your nervous system trust being in the space with me before your consciousness even knows? That's actually called neuroception. That's a ception word that we're
So, but
adding in there.
stillness is in my mind with that analogy that you gave of like alpha being the movement, the getting like, and I need you to reconcile this for me because like this is my therapy session here. So, like, because being still bothers me. Like, it actively is something that it is why I started reading fiction as, like, a form of, like, trying to heal, and I told my therapist, like, "Reading fiction is ruining my life," and she laughed at him like, "I'm serious. I'm really enjoying this, but there are so many hours that I am just reading and not getting anything done." And so when you say
Is that
that
okay? Is that Is that
I'm
okay?
trying to make it okay, but I'm trying to make it okay, but it's really not. It's this guilt, this lack of productivity that I
Yeah.
didn't move. I didn't do anything. So even like how I'll reconcile it is I'll literally, okay, I'll listen to an audiobook while I'm cleaning my kitchen. Okay, I got something done. Or I worked out while I was reading the book or, just like rode the bike. But when you say stillness is the foundation
It's
of
an
this,
alpha practice, right? So
how
there are feminine practices or
right.
omega practices. How do you get still?
Yeah.
How do you get still?
How do you no, how do you?
Yes. How do I get still? Well, for me, I actually did, I knew that I could not get still, could not sit still. But think about it like when you watch someone speak, like a public speaker, and they're
Mhm,
all jittery and moving and talking fast, and you don't feel you feel unsafe.
mhm.
You're less trustworthy. Like even as us chiropractors coming in the exam room, you're like, we're gonna, and it's like,
Right,
dude, take a breath, be present. Like presence is that stillness that like, and can I handle someone else's emotional outpour and outcry? So for me, practicing stillness, I went and did a 10-day silent meditation, like no eye contact, no, no speaking, nothing. It was really challenging too, because I'm in a room full of men and women, and it was like yoga and silence. And through a Ramana Maharshi was a realized being, I think in the late 1800s, early 1900s, who lived in a cave and like had such depth and stillness where people just were attracted to that, like gravity. And that's the analogy that I've worked with my
mhm,
teachers, like be presence like gravity, that depth. And it makes people feel more comfortable being around you.
right. So, I don't know what it was like back in, like, the 1700s, we weren't here, but I find that my guess as to kind of what has happened in the last 50 years is that the pendulum kind of was one way and now kind of like swung another. And that's where we're like, men are the problem. And now we're kind of going like, okay, actually, no, 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 no. We need both. But at the same time, so, like, I feel like we are, as a society, finally kind of in this area where, like, women have enough, like, rights to actually talk about this. Men maybe have enough freedom to talk about their emotional intelligence and vulnerability, feeling in a safe space. But at the same time, where we as a society are finally maybe at a point to talk about this, simultaneously, our society has, I think, foregone a lot of the passages or like ceremonial passages into womanhood and manhood. So, like for women, the birthing of a child is when a girl goes to a woman. It is anybody who's had a non medicated birth and has, like, seen like, you come out of birth different. You come out of that
Yeah.
experience, and, like, when you look at evolutionarily, that's a necessary experience. They it is claimed that that is a necessary experience for that female. Now, women are still giving birth. I will say that a lot of the births are completely disconnected from their body, though. So even though women are still having children, I think women are not going through this passage as much. And then men, you guys don't got anything. Like you used to like go into huts and get sent to a mountain and be like, come back in 3 days, maybe, Bob.
Yeah,
Or
bring me back a carcass, right?
right.
Well, what happens though, because you bring up a point, what if a woman chooses she doesn't want to have children? Is
Mhm.
there still like what other rites of passages are available for her to move into womanhood?
Oh shit, are you asking me?
I mean, we're having a conversation, right? So I don't know. And
Yeah. I
it's
mean,
maybe
I
that's
guess it
one that's
depends
just
on
left out there.
what is so is a rite of passage a
That's what you're talking
necessary
about.
thing? Yes.
I
Is it a necess
1,000,000% yes.
Mhm,
And I've actually gone through one of those too in my older age. And like the bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah
mhm,
for men and women is allegedly a rite of passage. There were some things that you had to, I was bar mitzvah, I was raised Jewish, so I had to learn another language, write a speech, do all these things. So there are little milestones and steps that are taken to allegedly bring you from boyhood to manhood. But I think it's too early. You're 13 years old. It's
mhm.
like you're not ready emotionally. Men, like our frontal lobes don't come online, I don't think, till maybe I was like 40. So um took me a little while.
Kinda like
So
asking a kindergartner, "Do you accept Jesus Christ into your heart?" And it's like, "Sure." And it's like, "Great, you get
yeah,
the jelly bean." And it's like,
or even like, what do you want to do when you grow up?
yeah,
Like, I don't. I just want to like pick this paste off the carpet, right?
yeah, yeah.
And that this does all circle back to like being still, holding space for other people, holding space for the omega and a woman's emotions, quote unquote woman, like being able to sit through those things. And even a man, being able to sit and hold space for a man who can cry, who's vulnerable enough to like let his shit out
Mhm.
and not trying to quote unquote fix it. That's where I think that toxic masculinity is like, there is no fixing. There's just holding space. There's just like being present for someone and witnessing them, because every human, all we want is to be seen, to be felt, and to be understood. Like that, those are like, that's almost like they should be on Maslow's hierarchy, right?
Right,
Beyond like our physical needs of breath and food and shelter.
right.
It's the emotional side. So rites of passage, there are groups out there as well who do rites of passage, desert fast, forest fast, alone time in the desert, things like that. There are a lot of different things out there that are available for men and women separately. I like the idea of rites of passage being for, gender specific or biological specific, regardless of sexual preference.
Do you feel like the ultimate goal is the same, but the path to get there is different for each gender?
Um,
Like, the hurdles
I,
to
I think this
overcome are different?
I mean, I can't speak for women
I will.
per se
You
in
tell
in
me the
that
men, I'll tell women.
well, I mean, I think that the structure is the same. Like if you can be alone, I like the concept of fasting, because food is like remove all distractions and be with oneself. However you get there,
Right.
that's to me is a rite of passage. Like, can you be in this world that we are constantly inundated by cheap dopamine?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it comes down to
How do
both.
we remove our and this does circle back to stillness. Like, how do we get back to that place where I can be still without doing anything, without production? And you asked, how can you do it? I think you should start at like 30 seconds at a time, stare at the wall.
Mhm. So
You'll
I
freak out.
think
I know, like in
yeah,
our
I'm
in our
like,
short time knowing each other, I know, but 30 seconds, like try that for 30
right,
seconds.
right. Oh, all right, I'll put it on my to-do list, and then
There
I'll
there are
cross
some
it
other
off and be like, "Ha, I was still." Well, no, hold on
we
a
can
sec.
talk
So
about real quick. We can talk about there are other meditation techniques,
yeah,
things that relatively distract the mind, but the mind never stops. It's like, do you attach to those thoughts or do you let them feelings or do you let them pass by like
right,
clouds?
right, watch it
Sorry.
flow by.
Yeah.
Um, I think that whether you look at male rites of passage or female rites of passage, there is a pain. The universal is that there's pain. There is a disassociation from your body of
Mhm.
going, "This meat sack is not me. It's not my identity." So I can overcome the pain of childbirth, I can overcome the pain of hunger, I can overcome the pain of being in a sweat lodge and dehydrate. Like, I can overcome the extreme cold, but I do think that both genders, when you look at, like, all the different things, like, if we came up with 50 different things for men and women that could, qualify as a rite of passage, this pivotal moment, it is overcoming the body and seeing that that is not your identity. And when you start to break down that this is not my identity, I mean, this is, as a chiropractor, been something I've been on for a couple years of just like disassociating from, like, my numbers are not my worth. Like, it's
Right.
not my identity. And so I would say that overcoming that pain or that discomfort, I would say, is a pivotal part of qualifying something as a rite of passage. Do you
Well,
agree?
that's why I think it's always spiritual, right? Like take the ice bath for a second. Like once you say, yes, I'm going to step in this tub, everything else that occurs after those words in your mind are just bullshit. They're just
Mm.
chatter. Like just get in.
It's really cold.
And
Like, it's
it is really
really
cool.
40 less than I learned that less than 40 degrees is substantially different than
Oh
50
yeah.
degrees.
Yeah.
Like,
Way.
you
Yeah.
think you are going to die. You are pretty
50s,
you're
but it's a mental and spiritual game.
Mhm.
I think if you can, because to me, like many of us, like you said, I agree, are dissociated from our bodies. I even taught it in that fashion. I was a CBP doctor, and I could look at your spine and your posture and measure it and analyze it. And I forgot that there were people in there. I forgot, and probably because of my own essence of like dissociating from my own body. But now, like as I've done so much work around this, I now use my body as a tool to make decisions here. So it's the concept is embodied cognition. And there's more and more science leading to that our body actually does feed cognition. So I think our job as a chiropractor, even from a spiritual perspective, is to help people connect to their bodies. So the pain is a connection.
Mhm.
So the pain that someone's feeling is like, oh shit, there's a body, there's the energy in a body in here, and they are one. Am I going to let this overtake me, or am I going to learn to deal with the pain of hunger if you're fasting, of silence and stillness if you're meditating? Those are all painful, especially for people like us in our society who are like, we're used to offices running, everyone coming at us, being needed, producing all of those things. But can we just sit still?
Well, and I think that it's one thing to look at like the hyper productive person and be like, "Oh, you really struggle with stillness." But like as a society, do you feel like we are becoming very soft and just avoiding discomfort? I mean, so even someone who has no problem getting nothing done, they're not sitting and meditating. That person is likely scrolling all day. So
Yeah,
they're
and
not
sitting on a
being still
couch and
either.
and being yeah,
Like, "Oh, yeah,
yes.
you're still, but you're
So,
not what we're talking about." And, like, as a society, are we just especially in America,
I think
um
yes. I'm gonna give you an all caps yes. Did you ever see the movie WALL-E?
Yeah.
Right? You know
Mhm.
what the humans become, where their bones don't
Mhm.
even work
Yep,
anymore
red drink,
because
blue
they're
drink, like
yeah, that's kinda I feel like I'm a vestige, and I know you are too, like, I'm like, "Hey, I like eye contact and handshakes and hugs." I like videos on when we're having a meeting and those types of things. I think that's important because it's human connection. It's basic human biology. We have not evolved out of that yet. And I hope we never do because that's what keeps us human. So yeah, I think we're becoming soft. And I also think that men are becoming soft
well, we
in
kinda
particular.
did that to them as a society. We
Yeah. And I think it's
told them,
perpetuated. Yeah.
you
Be
know, we told
softer.
them, like, "Women aren't gonna be attracted to you if you have a trade job. You need to go get a 4-year education degree," or, that's the path to
Seems like every woman that I meet loves firemen and like construction workers. So I
I
don't know.
I know. But no, like, yeah, we really did kind of do that to men of saying, like, you need to be smart, and electricians aren't smart, or, like, whatever we kinda said, and I think that that's kind of unraveling too, of, like, Jordan Peterson talks about, like, we need like, okay, we gotta stop attacking the man because women are not signing up at the same rate to go into the military, to climb the poles, to get down into the sewers. Like our entire grid system will fail if we kind of keep allowing men, keep telling them that their masculinity is the problem and kind of like funneling them into being soft. And so then it's just like, how do we reconcile this in real
And
time? Because these are
then there's
like,
no polarity, right? Soft men, women aren't attracted to. And then if you have no polarity, there's no desire, and then there's no procreation of species. So we do have a problem. So I
we're
think
seeing that. Yeah.
let's redefine masculinity, you know, and redefine what it looks like. Someone who can be present and be still like gravity, and feminine flow like water, or omega, which we're going to
Mhm.
interchange those terms here. So I think there's a lot of work for our society to do, and a lot of men are afraid to be vulnerable and talk about their losses or their feelings or their love for their children or cry. I have a secret to crying though.
What? Do you cry
Have you ever
easily? Is it
No,
on an airplane?
no, 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 it's a
Research
movie.
shows it's easier to cry on an airplane?
I sleep on airplanes
Oh,
because I
okay.
travel a lot.
All right, what's your secret?
The movie Interstellar. Have you seen it?
Mm-mm.
Ugh, watch that.
Yeah.
There's
Uh,
I the music starts and I start crying.
oh,
My kids are like my daughter looks at me, she's like, "Dad, come on already." Like, yeah. Anytime a movie for me, this is me like time
mhm.
travel and love, I'm crying. But no, I don't cry easily. But as I've aged, also I've become more in touch with my own body, my own empathic abilities. So like sometimes someone will cry and I'll feel my own eyes starting to tear up and like being in that feeling with that person.
Yeah, I'm no longer uncomfortable by it. I think that that is something that in
Growth.
my journey to becoming I'm uncomfortable with myself crying, and I'm
Mm.
uncomfortable with somebody. I once had a brand new doc cry loudly in public, like, as the community was just getting used to her, and I was just like, "You are a doctor in this town, you cannot, like, get your shit together, go to your car and cry, but, like, you cannot, this is not appropriate." And so but, like, as becoming a softer leader, and therefore a stronger leader, more omega leader, I should say, that was something that I needed to sit with, that, like, my employees, nobody would argue that, like, a good leader needs to really hear their employees. We're like, "Yeah, totally, totally. Yep, I get it. I hear it. We do monthly meetings." But, like, do they
Are you
feel
really
heard?
listening?
Right.
Yeah.
Do they feel heard is a different question than did you hear them? Because my personality is like, yeah, I walked away from that and they want they want this and they want coffee in the break room. Great. And it's like, but they may walk away from that meeting being like, she thinks coffee in the break room is the gist of it. And so that has definitely been a part of my journey of going like, "Okay, do they feel safe?" So it wasn't, and again, it wasn't just going like, "Okay, I don't have a problem with them crying." Okay, but that's half of the equation. Do they feel like they can trust me? Am I being still enough and holding space for them that they feel safe crying? So it's not just like, I won't yell at them and make fun of them for crying. It's like, no, 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 no. Have I created an energy in which, and that's when they can start to feel heard, is not until they feel safe enough with me. Like it's when they feel safe enough that they can fully express that then they feel, air quotes, maybe it's not heard, it's seen.
I think it's all, I mean, it's everything heard, seen, felt. It depends if someone's more kinesthetic or auditory or visual, but it's all, they're all the same. It's like, can you be with me? And can you be with me while I'm in my shit? And do I feel safe to reveal that? Sometimes the workplace doesn't allow for that, but this is like leadership 2.0 training. Like I didn't
Mhm.
get any of this till way after any of that. And I think many of the women that I've met in our profession are like yourself and some other leaders, female leaders in our profession, in the chiropractic profession. Like I've seen them have a really cool balance of that alpha and omega, like where they'll get shit done and adjust 100 people in a day and go out and do a screening and then talk on the weekend and then also give space for their employees to reveal what's going on, what might not be working, whatever that is. But it's that's where I think it comes into, all of this comes into play, is like, if is there a unity of that and is there a balance and how do you
But it's
play?
easier for women. So, like, I would love to hear from you because, like, that's basically like, I can be it all, right? Like, I think it is truly easier for women. Oh, yeah, like, look, she can go do this, and then she also has sex with her husband 6 times a week and has dinner on the table. Like, that's a medal for us. But for men, I would love to hear an experience because, like, let's say that you are working, so, like, okay, I'm a alpha boss, and I'm trying to figure out how to sit down with a female CA of mine and become more omega. Okay, I'm not saying it's easy, but, like, easier than I am imagining you being an alpha boss, sitting down with another man, and I would love to hear something that, like, maybe specifically you had to overcome or learn how to approach it, because that doesn't sound as easy for the man to tap into the omega in that situation. Does that make
Well,
sense? Does that
let's yeah, it does, and I think I want to clarify it, meaning that I think I actually, in those instances, I had to become more masculine,
Ooh,
more
what?
alpha,
Okay.
meaning I had to be stiller, hold a deeper presence so that someone else could express themselves, and leading with curiosity. Now, it's different than me being vulnerable and expressing myself. That's a different,
Right.
like when I present on stage, I lead with vulnerability, and that's done on purpose because I want to show. the audience, yes, I'm on stage. So like when people are on stage, they're already on stage. So you did something to get there,
Mhm.
right? But I don't want to shame the audience because I have something that I want to relay to them. I want them to understand my point or buy what I'm selling on stage, quote unquote. So my intention is to be vulnerable and share some of my pains and some of my losses so that I'm on equal playing ground. Now, like being a boss, quote unquote, running a practice, I found in my later years in practice that I would have to be more still and shut up, ask a question and let someone express themselves. So I don't think it was a perspective of me being more omega or feminine. I physically would ask a question and do this so I could shut myself up because
Mhm.
I've been talking nonstop.
Right.
But it's really like, and I've literally taken courses on becoming a more empathic listener, and it all comes down to like being radically curious, like taking a question that you ask or something that you said, and then pulling that, and then pulling more and seeing what threads come out of it, which is where
Mhm.
this how this conversation got here.
It feels like it feels like we're like both genders are striving to get to the center. Like it's almost I understand. I definitely understand the polarity aspect. Like that makes complete sense. But when we're talking about like you have all these people on a different spectrum and what they need a little more of, the person who empathy come and vulnerability comes really easily, they need more of something that this person has. And so it's like, do you think that men and women are basically striving to get to the same characteristics of wholeness? Like, is being a whole human the same, regardless of men or women? And then where's the polarity in that?
Yeah, well, I th- it,
Easy
it's not
question.
stat.
I mean,
It's
come
well,
on.
yeah, totally easy questions. Hopefully, my teachers will be proud of me that
My
they
God, that's
listen
a
to this. But
really hard
I
question.
but you're talking in terms of static, like black and white. Nothing exists that way. It's like you've dissected the full human body. The bicep doesn't exist by itself, right? All the tendons are mixed in with the fascia, connected to all other areas. So everything is unified. So we break it down into its parts to study it and understand it, like in this dualistic thinking, but really in a unified thinking where we are all one. You can break that even into
Hmm.
more of a society, like we are all one, like truly the change that we want to see in the world. I forgot who said this quote, but you may be, but it's like start with yourself and it ripples and ripples and ripples. So I don't think there's a final destination to reach. I think, in romance, romance doesn't last without polarity. We've
Hmm.
all been there. Like when polarity ends and you're living with your best friend, that's
Right.
that's where romance ends, right? But that, like, how do you, and again, it's different for each person, but like that spark, that desire that's needed. And I think there's also like that polarity is important, in the right barriers in a workplace as well, and understanding like, okay, I'm going to hold more space so you can express yourself. And I don't
Right.
talk to my employees like I didn't tell them about this. I just got quieter and asked
Right. You don't
more
tell people,
important
I'm
questions.
changing. I'm going to become
Yeah,
more empathic.
right.
Okay. So I want to ask it a different way though, because, all right. So let's say that you are designing a video game where
Mm,
you have a man and a woman and they're going to be married and you have to like set their personalities and strengths and weaknesses. And so you have, 50 different strengths and, empathy, communication. We'll just take the strength finder strengths, competitiveness. And you are creating on each one of those, certain levels.
mhm.
Are you going to on some so are you going to give like, "Okay, I'm gonna give the man 70% of the competitiveness and the woman 30%?" Or like, is the goal for ultimate, I don't know, human
Unity.
yes, to be everyone is it's 50-50. Like,
I
is
don't
it
I don't
is
I no, I don't think that's the goal because each person has an entire history
Mhm,
of trauma and experience that makes them
mhm.
one way or another, and they're born certain ways
Right.
with more preferences of it just depends how you think about that. So I don't think it's like I don't think the goal is 50-50, everyone split. It'd be kind of boring,
You
right?
and it does you're right, it doesn't allow for innate
Individuality.
like certain God-given things of like drive or,
Yes.
to really be expressed.
Yeah. And I do think it's, like, I'm the youngest of 3 brothers. I'm the most vocal, I'm the most dramatic, I'm the most sensitive, and I got tortured because of all of that. And then on that same end, like, I didn't know how to emotionally regulate myself when I was being tortured. So it took many, many years to figure all of that out. That formed me, right? Like, I had to be funny, I had to be louder because I was way younger than everybody. So it just, like, formed my whole being, but I think I was born more sensitive. Like, thank God I'm other, like, I don't drink milk and I don't have gluten, like, 'cause all those things affect my body. And when they're causing me to be inflamed, I can't get feedback from my body. I lived like that for
Mhm.
years until I figured this out. And, that's just been my experience and my path. But I think those are all, and that helps us as practitioners too.
Right.
Like, if someone's walking in your office, yeah, they have pain, this and that, but, like, if their whole essence is inflamed because of the food they're eating, like, how much help can you give them
Right.
without changing that?
Okay, so can you walk me through an example, not asking you to overshare in your relationship or anything like that, but like, you know, a specific trait that is not equal between you and your partner. So whether it is competitiveness, drive for societal achievement, whatever it is, that's not 50-50. That is definitely, somebody's got 70-30, 80-20, and then how you allow space for that complete difference in the relationship without judgment. Because I'll give you the context. I am I think my husband would be totally fine if we just lived a simple life. We weren't in debt, but, like, he doesn't need, like, his experience. Like, I need experiences. I need that, and he doesn't, and that doesn't make him wrong. Society would say he's the loser and I'm the winner, though, right? So, like, when we look at it, like, we know that. We know that's not true, but, like, I'm 80% of this, like, go, 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 and so within us, like, it is skewed and we've had to overcome, like, I'm not wrong, but neither is him, neither is he. And how do we hold space for both of us that are very, very different in this relationship?
I'm gonna circle this back to you
I
versus
was trying to
me.
make it about you.
No, I know, and I'm making it about you because I think this is more important. Like, are there aspects where you just feel like you're doing too much shit and you disconnected from your own body?
I feel like there's had to be a lot of work of realizing, there was a lot of work of what is the end goal? Like, what the kind of getting off the separating the core values of freedom and, like, no, it's not fueled by greed. It's fueled by a lust for life. Like, maximizer is definitely a strength of mine. It's like, and so it's figuring out how to go, like, have conversations with, like, is this because of greed? Is this because of wanting to impress people? What is the root of that desire for me?
Drive?
Yeah,
Are you
of
saying
that
more the
drive.
drive to wanna be
Yeah.
quote unquote "successful"
Yep.
and make money?
Yep.
Well, because I mean, look, I think money, this is my opinion, it just makes us more of what we are,
Mhm.
right? So if you're a jerk, you become more of a jerk, and if you're generous, you become more generous when you have more money, and I also think money allows us to do cool things,
I think a lack
right?
of
And
money, I don't know, I agree with that to a certain point. I think that nobody is their true self when they're in fight or flight, and when you are very much
yeah,
financially struggling, you are not your true self. So I think that, like, if you're in a situation where your marriage, you're fighting about why did you spend $150 at the grocery store, like, that's not gonna be anybody's best. But I do agree, like, once you kinda get out of that fight or flight of finances, then an extra 100K isn't gonna change anything, type of thing.
right. I wanna bring us back on
Yeah,
track
I'm proud
because
of you. Good job.
I don't want us to, money's a separate conversation, we could do
Yeah.
that for the next question, but we were talking about, like, well, you had asked in my personal life, like, how do I create that balance or the harmony between my partner?
That
And I
one of
can,
you isn't better than the other for having that.
oof, mm,
I know these are like,
I think it's like, do you feel settled and comfortable in your body? Like that's the litmus test, right? Do I feel anxious all the time when I'm around you, or do I
Mhm.
feel calmer like a romantic partner perspective? Like,
Right.
do I feel more calm around you, or do I feel more anxious? Is there like a power struggle, or can I be whole and you be whole, and we have this interdependent relationship versus a codependent relationship? One person being better than the other, I think that's a perspective of competitiveness
Yeah, I would say,
coming
like,
from.
when I say that, I mean society has certain traits. America has certain traits that we promote or, first world countries that we're just like, "Okay, nobody's better, but the person who built a $1,000,000 company is better than the unemployed person who can't keep a job," right? Like, society has
Get that.
this
Yeah.
thing. So, I'm not saying that within my marriage but, like, I guess first step is you have to overcome, like, what's the litmus test for
Well,
that?
and
And if
also
it's
the
society's.
reliance, and also the reliance on external situations or people to determine your own worth.
Mhm,
I think that's, and I believe that, when I talk to, because I've been divorced, I've had heartbreaks and, you name it. When I talk to young couples getting married, I'm like, start therapy now on
mhm,
yourself. Like work on yourself. I got married so young, so I didn't have time to like really work on myself. I like got married, opened a business, had kids, and it didn't give me time to work on me. So I had to find that. And I distracted myself with other things until I finally got divorced. And it was like, oh shit, now I'm working on me all the
mhm,
time. So I think it takes like as a couple, a partnership have to take a step back out of society and say like, what is most important to us? Fuck
mhm,
society
mhm,
and what they think is important and who should be doing this or that. I was just with a couple the other night where the man is in the mortgage industry and it's doing horrible now. And he was the breadwinner, and the woman is in nursing. And so now he's taking care of the kids and she's working
mhm.
until mortgage rates change, So I think it's a constant flow, ebb and flow.
2 questions there. So, first one is, like, obviously, anytime a marriage ends, it is multifactorial. Um, do you think that because we glorify like, we still talk on like, people on stages within the chiropractic profession, specifically, we're talking here, about, like, do the guy who does health talks multiple times a week for new patients and he doesn't get to see his kids and put them to bed. We simultaneously glorify that hustle to build the most impact within a chiropractic clinic. Are you with me so far?
I'm tracking you. Yes.
Do you think your focus, like, were you too focused on that? Was that
Yes.
part of.
Well, yeah, I ignored my relationship,
Mhm.
and I had kids early, business early. I think I was 27 when I started my practice,
Yeah.
and I had hustled a couple years up until then and then had kids at 29 and 30. So, it was all happening at once. I think the kids, I was present as much as I could be for the kids, but I think that's like, and I know it's what you teach as well. It's like you can have it all. I'm gonna shamelessly plug Genesis too
Mhm.
because that's how I met you.
Mhm.
But like, if you're in practice and you're not leveraging technology and
Cue the
still doing shit on
Genesis,
paper,
ad.
when
I said,
yeah,
"Cue the Genesis ad."
cute Genesis ad, right? But seriously though, I mean, if you're like trying to do I used to walk around with like a file cabinet, calling insurance companies in between patients when I was first started, like 100 square feet. So like, I had to do that in the early stages, but there's ways now where you can cheaply get into leveraging things
Mhm.
so that you can have that. So did I focus too much on, let's break it down to this, like burnout? And I don't, I think one of the societal issues that we're experiencing now, especially in our profession, is that burnout becomes like a badge of honor or a badge of courage. And like, I disagree. Like a dysregulated nervous system should not be the direction you want to go so that we just rot and age. Like I want to ski and surf and free dive till I'm 100, till I hit the dirt. Like like I'm done with burnout being a commonality for myself.
Do you think the old school I mean, the greats, the Reggie Golds, the Sigafu, all insert name. Do you think that they dealt with burnout?
Yeah, I do, and I think that they have like an amazing level of fortitude and also intelligence to know that grit alone, right? Because that's what you're talking about is that hustle.
Mhm.
Grit alone is not sustainable. You have to stack other things on top of that. So I think that their passion was stacked on top of that. Their ability to get into a flow state with adjusting hordes of people, allowed them to say like, okay, I can continue to work because I know some of the greats still that are existing and they
Mhm.
hustle hard into their 60s and 70s, but they're in 80s and they're just working smarter. So I think there is a
But we aren't asking
balance
them
there.
about their marriages.
Personal life,
Like,
yeah.
we're not asking about, like,
True.
their
Yeah.
can you
Relationship with
be
their kids.
Yep, absolutely. Can you be a dysregulated chiropractor that regulates 1,000 people a week? I think so.
No. I
I
like
think on paper you can be. I think you
well,
can
yeah,
go
yeah,
on a
I agree because
stage
I was
and write a
yeah,
book and say,
yeah,
like,
good
"I
point.
am this," and it's like it's difficult when we, start looking at that whole human experience. But so here was my second question to capstone it. So like there's that grit of starting. And if you it's like this pit ditch on both sides of the road, right? So it's like, all right, that was kind of my question of like, do you feel like you were too much in one side of the ditch to the detriment of other areas in your life? But I've sat in a room on a panel with other amazing women. Oh my gosh. And a very young, like Cairo student asked how we handle the emotional development while simultaneously so she was like for advice for me starting out, how do I balance like all of these like becoming a better person and deep things that we've talked about therapy for the last 30 years and running a business. And I felt terrible because I audibly laughed and I said like I didn't give a I could you get out and you hustle. Like there's no room. These conversations that you and I are having, at a certain point you just need life experience to do it. Could you have, here's the question, could you have actually done it in your early 20s? Could you have found this point of equilibrium, of harmony and balance within your income and chiropractic profession and all of this, but then your relationships? Or is it a certain point you just have to go through life and that's how you find that middle of the road?
You're full of great questions. I think we have to experience it. Like from I know I'll speak for myself personally, like I have to embody failure or pain
Mhm.
in order to not do it again.
Yep.
I can't borrow someone else's experience. I would have liked to have had someone like me as a coach, knowing that like, hey, dude, it's gonna be okay. Like
Would
I've
you
done
have
a
heard
lot of
it though? Would you have heard it?
it depends on who it came from because I did
It
meet I
depends.
did
If it was
I
me.
did yeah, probably because like I admire you, like I see what you do and it's impressive and and not the success, like the how you balance and your energy and how you use that. I don't know you well enough yet, but like I intuit that you've got a balance there. So it really just depends. I've had mentors along the way who have said things, but I didn't listen to them. Some of them I didn't
Mhm.
listen to, and some I did. So I've done a lot of my own work where I revisit myself as a child now as a I say regulate like a regulated adult,
Mhm.
and I visit these parts and I'm there for myself when I needed way back when, and then even in these years in chiropractic. But there were certain years or decades that I had to hustle and grind, and I feel like I'm intelligent and capable enough. Had I had what I know now, like I would have put these things in my life because I see people doing it who are younger than me. You're a
Mhm.
millennial, I'm not, right? And I see people in your generation, specifically men that I know in the field who are doing it, who are running a practice, maybe another company, having a solid relationship and putting time into it, not just on the outside.
Right.
Um,
But they
you
still
know,
didn't do it by 24. Like,
we're
you
probably not
know
designed to do it by then. I don't think
right,
our
and that's the
brain
thing
fully
is, like,
develops till we're 25.
I think that,
Maybe if we learned about empathy, movement, posture, subluxation, and things like that in our youth versus like some of the useless shit that
yeah,
we're studying in school,
yeah.
that
I feel
that
like
may that may have ramped that may ramp us up. But there's a there's it takes
and then
time to
you
learn.
take and here's the other issue is, uh, just making a generalization not from my own personal experience, from what like psychologists and like people who study ages. Okay. So this is not my opinion. This is what I've read is that it's coming back to the softening or the like softening as a society is that we've got the early 20s, like teenagers, early 20s, not seeking as much discomfort. Okay. So, like, what we're talking about is like, yeah, you got to bump up against that guardrail and be like, oh, lesson learned. That's why I asked, like, would you have avoided the pain if somebody would have told you, hey, Brian, this is going to lead this way? Like, if you're
No,
anything like
me,
me, I'd have been like, not
because
me. I'm special.
no, me, I'm dense.
Yep.
So it
I
takes
needed to
pain and
learn I
experience
needed to learn that painful lesson in
for
order to
myself.
but we have apparently, a society that is avoiding pain. And so therefore is not experiencing these lessons. And, they talk about like social media therapy and they're like, and the wokeism of just going like, oh, I'm healing my inner child. And it's like, you need to be making mistakes. Like, you don't need to be worrying about your 5-year-old self right now. You need to be going into life and making mistakes and failing
Well,
and
actually,
recovering.
like, bringing that five-year-old child to a relationship or recognizing when that
Mm,
five-year-old child comes out in a I mean,
mhm,
we learn more about ourselves in relationship, platonic or romantic,
mhm,
than anything else versus sitting in there through. Because 'cause I've done tons of therapy as well, and there comes a point where I'm like, "Okay, I gotta bring this shit into action. Let me see
mhm.
how it works in my relationships," and I've done all different types. As a society, we do need to get back to our roots, like breathing, dancing, singing, tribal work, fire, nature. I feel like I'm a vestige, but that's part of my purpose. Like, I see what's happening to the younger generation, this softening, and there needs to be not just a softening, but a sharpening
I like that.
and,
'Cause
a
it's
level of
this
surrender
you
to
would
all of
ask
that.
what's the opposite of soft, and I would say hard, and that's a question that I've been kinda meaning to, like, insert, but I kept forgetting of, like, but we're running away from hard. Like, we became soft because we pointed at hard and was like, "I don't want that," but it's not hard. It's sharp. I
Well,
love
then,
that.
you get stuck if it's too sharp, right? Like, I'm one who goes to my edges. Sometimes I've gone too far and the edges have pushed back and I've been injured emotionally or physically. But that's me, that's my lesson, but I'm still pushing edges emotionally, physically, athletically. That's just who I am. And I'm always up for the challenge because that's what gets me into a flow state. That's what excites me. So I think, yeah, as general society, our generations do need that edginess, do need to push themselves a little bit harder. And there are outliers for sure.
Oh, yeah.
I think part of what we do in the chiropractic profession in moving us beyond back pain doctors is this essence, like what we're talking about here, helping people truly connect to what they are inside, through their bodies, like
Mhm,
we talked about, like embodied cognition, like, okay, my body is just as important as my brain is just as, it's like these function together. And you as a chiropractor are bringing me back to my body so that I can use it as a tool to function more efficiently in life,
mhm.
in relationships.
So I think so this kind of final question I'll ask. I think I can easily see what role does femininity have. Shit, we never defined what a feminist is. Okay, insert. Hopefully, I remember that. Hopefully, I remember I was going with that
But
question.
that'll be in the second version. Yeah.
Okay, so I can see, I think society, it's very easy to see what role femininity and omega energy has going forward. How do we evolve? I think I like the word evolve more than heal. How do we progress as an entire society over the next 20, 30 years? I can look and I go, look, listen, femininity in both genders has been absolutely squashed for the last 200 years. Yes, I can see femininity's role in helping us move forward. My question to you is what is masculinity's role in it? Like, how would you define masculinity in this 21st century? And what imperative role does it have in progressing us as a society over the next 20, 30 years?
Another awesome question.
Thanks. Nobody's going to listen, it's just us.
Yeah. It's just us. Nobody. I think I'm going to speak for men
I wanted you to.
who want to embody who want to embody the masculine essence has to come through their bodies first. And I'm not sure where this will go, but I always think of like open heart, strong back. So like embody this open posture, not just because it's bad for text neck, but it's because so we're the only species, bipedal species, right? We're bipedal and we have all of our organs exposed. Every other animal's on four legs and its vital organs are protected. So intuitively we want to close.
Mhm.
So men need to show that they can be physically open and symmetrical. And that already creates more trust from a physiological nervous system perspective. And then be more empathic in your listening, ask more questions, be more still, breathe deeply. I said be still, but be still again.
I lied, I have another question.
Okay, go ahead. Does that, but that's what I think like
The
society is
stillness
calling
of
on for men.
masculinity,
Yeah.
recognizing from that stillness as a
And things
yes.
are always moving inside. Cells
Yeah.
are, we know that, but like, can I be still? Can I breathe deeper so that I like, and men need to focus on like, am I trustworthy?
Mhm.
Like, can you trust me? That's like the best thing that a female partner can say to me more than I love you. It's like, I trust you.
I trust that you got this. Yeah, you
Yeah.
are.
I trust,
I
I
feel
trust that
safe in
you
your
can.
presence. I mean,
Yeah.
that is the most evolutionary masculine, we tend to put it to finances, but it is I feel safe.
Yes.
All right, so my question is, and this is actually a question that I don't think you're gonna offend anybody except for men on this, and you're a man, so it works out. You have talked about being in the body a lot, and then you even said, like, "Open heart, strong back." Do you feel that there is an essence of the physical working out, like, literal strength? Literal, like, I can be a physical human healthy body that is important in the true masculine experience. Like, and kind of combining like soft, like, is in these things you go to, these spaces, are you talking about like, yeah, but also be fit and not because she's gonna think your abs are sexy, bro. It's because that is a part of the masculine experience of being a strong, safe provider and like in that process, like I've seen my husband, and I'll share just I've seen my husband find so much of his true, because he leans omega, and where he has really found his true alpha and body is when he has started working out and lifting weights, and he has become more connected with his body, and that has helped his entire being, like his spiritual being, his whole everything. So, is that, do you think, important for men?
100%. It's funny because of where I came from a chiropractic perspective, because I was, again, a CBP doctor, all about posture and looking at it more from this structural point. But now I take all of that knowledge and integrate it with what I've learned about energy, what we've been talking about for the last hour. And I'm going to take it back to like people ask me, why do you train? And to keep an open heart and a strong back. That's what I tell them. And to run away from zombies or swim away from zombies. So there's
I
always
can defend my
that
family.
factors that factor's just there for me. Say again.
So I can defend my family.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like and they
That's
trust me,
why I
right?
have guns.
But
No.
there is, I believe, like I like and it's also like as a man, it's a perception, but I think there is a level of control. Like if I lift heavier weights, I can watch my muscles grow.
Mhm.
And many young men, like I have a son who started lifting weights and he's 17. He's super fit, always in the gym doing things, but he does it for sports, he does it for look, but women do it too. But I think it's like that I can do something and see a result. I think that's really important for just growth as a spiritual being, is like to show that okay, I can control my effort and my attitude, and that's really all we can control. And so yes, I think there is space to pay attention to training for opening the heart and being able to be present and have that energy. Like there's more and more studies coming out of the electromagnetic field coming out of your heart. And if it's compressed, there's less of a field available. It's like you've walked into a room where you felt safe with a man, even if you don't know him, or you see him and you're like, wow, I just feel like this vibe, like this energy, and he's open, willing to ask me questions and not just talk about himself. So like yeah,
Mhm.
there's a space for training, and I believe it is in that essence to evolve and know that it's okay. Like I feel safe in my own body and to expose my vital organs.
Yeah. Oh, man. I love this. I love this
You
so
need a
much.
part two, huh?
Yep. Okay, so I said that was gonna be the last question, and then I asked you 4 more. Do you feel like I left anything untouched, or do you feel
No,
like
we
cool.
talked about polarity, we taled about burnout, we talked
Yeah.
about genesis, we talked about working smart and stacking things on top of grit. So I think we got to. I really hope the audience, like, I hope you all like really
Okay, but you
like
wouldn't describe yourself as a feminist?
as it. I look up the definition of feminism. I
Doesn't
don't
it just
know.
mean, you support women?
I mean, I support women. Yeah,
Right?
yeah. I got to tell you, it was interesting. I was just surfing in Puerto Rico, and I'm in these big waves, and there's men and there's women out there. Way more men. They're so aggressive and testosterone, like, get off my wave or I'm gonna like get out of here. These are big boy waves. Go home, boy. And then I'm meeting women out in the water and they're like harmonious and moving and fluid and flowing. I'm like, I'm gonna hang out with the women here, like,
Women.
and jive with the women surfers. And there's just more of a beauty to it. But I think the scales are a little tipped. And I even talked to a woman out in the water, and she's like, "Yeah, I love surfing with women because they're more supportive and harmonious." But I'm going to take that energy, right?
Mhm.
That quote unquote feminine or mothering energy. We all have that, and fathering energy. You can
Yeah.
call it those things too. So there's a space for all of it.
Wow. Love it. Okay, She Slayers, if you liked this conversation, I would highly encourage you to go check out, me on Genesis Nations podcast that I will have a link for below. So you can go listen to Brian and I talking about similar but very different things. Because that was a really good conversation too. This was
It
good.
was.
So
It was.
so thank you so much,
So if,
Brian.
if we're delayed on the production end, it'll come through. But you
You
can
will
find
find
me
it
on
somewhere.
Instagram or YouTube and through Genesis and through myself as well.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
All right.
Awesome conversation. Wait, before we say
Yeah.
bye,
Well, yeah.
am
Jeez
I a
Louise.
am I
Are
a
you a
she
she slayer?
slayer now?
You are. You are.
All
Yep.
right,
Yeah,
cool.
I had this is
I need a
something I had
shirt.
to reconcile because I was literally like, is the name of my podcast, do I have to change it? And like, I'm the she. So like, you're a she slayer because you agree with the message of the
So be it.
podcast.
I need a shirt now, though. I
Wow.
want a t-shirt.
You got it.
All right.
All
Thanks,
right.
Doc.
Until next week, she slayers.
Yes.
Bye.